Hello, and welcome to today's episode of the Laundromat Millionaire Show. We have an exciting guest for you today. Now a laundromat owner, we have Stephen Gramaglia of New York. He was the former COO of Eastern Funding for over 20 years. He has a lot of wonderful information for our audience today.
Yeah, as you guys know, we're approaching 60 episodes now, Carla, and some of them have been just us, talking shop and sharing operating procedures and how we do this, how we do that. Some of them have been having guests on that have just gotten into the industry. We've definitely had some legends on the show for sure. The founders of Eastern Funding, for sure. We've had our friend Chris Mihalik on the show. We've had our friend Jordan Berry on the show, who started Laundromat Resource. So we've definitely run the gamut. It's been a ton of fun going through season 3. And don't worry, because we're not ending yet. We're going to keep going with season 4 here shortly. But the cool thing about this episode is I'm not sure we've ever had a guest that I can think of that had 20 years executive experience at Eastern Funding, which is still in the industry. He's kind of a data, number cruncher, finance kind of guy. So if you like to get nerdy, we get a little bit nerdy with him, not too much because he would have lost me. But he's also now resigned or retired, I guess is the word, from his position as COO at Eastern Funding. And for the last three years or so, he's actually become a laundromat owner/operator. And he went from building one new store in Yonkers, New York, to acquiring a turnkey store, which is kind of a unicorn. And we talk about that a little bit. And now he's building store number 3, which he's going to be opening soon. And he even teased us a little bit about maybe a store number 4 coming along. So we really feel it's a little bit of a longer episode, but the truth is we feel like there was just, probably a couple dozen golden nuggets in there if you're looking for them. So get your notepad out, get ready to take notes. Let's jump right into the episode.
Okay, before we get started on today's episode, we do want to take a moment to remind you of a very cool opportunity that we just started on our website. If you haven't heard about it yet, it's the Laundromat Millionaire Community. It is a membership where you can gain access to everything that we have about laundromats. So products that we've created, forms you can download, all kinds of stuff that we use in our laundromat that you can use in yours. Even a searchable video library in case you're researching the industry or certain aspects of the industry.
Yeah, you get discounts. You get the ability to chat with me in a more intimate setting on very specific topics. You get distributor and product reviews from users in the community. It's a behind-the-scenes intimate community that I'm very involved in. We're very passionate about, and we'd love for you to check it out on our website. Go to laundromatmillionaire.com, click on the community tab, and see what it's all about.
All right. So, Stephen, welcome to the show. We're excited to interview you today. You definitely have an interesting story as to how you got into laundromats. But before we get into that, can we talk about what made you who you are? Where did you grow up? What kind of upbringing did you have? Have you always been entrepreneurial? What can you tell us about yourself?
Sure. Well, first of all, thanks for having me. This is it's a great opportunity. I grew up in the suburbs of New York City. I grew up in a small town called Ossining, New York, which has a claim to fame of being the home of Sing Sing Prison, which is one of the oldest and most notorious prisons in the United States. Al Capone was actually a resident there for a time, obviously before my time.
Wow.
So that's what our little town is known for. We're about 45 miles north of Manhattan. It was a nice upbringing. It was a suburban area, lots of kids to run around and hang out with, and made some great friends, great memories. My father was a salesman. He sold audio video equipment when I was growing up, and he worked in Manhattan. So we had some nice times. He would bring me to work and I would get to play with the projection machines and the reel-to-reel tapes. I mean, this is going back to the 70s.
Super high-tech stuff, right?
Yeah.
It was then.
Back then it was, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
And my mom was a homemaker. I have 2 older siblings that were much older. So I spent basically from when I was about 10 years old, I was basically an only child. My siblings were out of the house, so I became sort of an only child. I wound up going to college nearby. I went to a college called Pace University, which is a small, it's basically a split college. It had a business school and a nursing school and a little bit of other things, but that was what it was known for. And it's fairly well known in this part of the world, in New York. They have a campus in New York City. And I was a finance major. I was always good at math and I always liked money. So I decided being a finance major would be a good thing. I had, in terms of being entrepreneurial, I wasn't really entrepreneurial, but I worked. I was a worker. My family believed that everybody needed to work. You know, there's no free rides. So when I got to college, I worked various different things. But the one thing that sort of led me to where I am today, which is sort of interesting, was I got an internship when I was at college. And the internship was a paid internship, but it was for a small finance company that was owned by a gentleman who was in his 70s at that time. And it was a very small company. There was like 8 or 9 employees, and I was his intern. I worked for the owner of the company, and he had a very interesting background. He was a CPA and a lawyer. He had both of those credentials, and he got involved somehow through doing that in terms of lending money. And his specialty was anything that you could put a coin in, which I thought was fascinating when I was looking for jobs. And I had interviewed at several different companies. And that was fascinating. So I was about 19 years old, and I had the opportunity to work for a company. And what they financed was, at that time, so this was probably 1993 or 1994, they financed jukeboxes in bars. So anyone that had a route, so it's very similar to our industry that we're in now. So there were route operators that had jukeboxes and video games and cigarette machines that would go to bars, corporate campuses like office buildings, office parks, and they would put their machines there. And again, this is before credit card use on anything. It was all coin op. So he financed route operators for those types of equipment. He financed arcades, which being 19 or 20 years old, arcades were, it was big back then. He was one of the first financiers of Dave & Buster's.
Really?
Back when Dave & Buster's was very, very small company. And other types of amusement venues, and also laundromats. So that was my introduction to, in terms of doing financing for that type of industry. So that was my intro. I wound up staying through that internship for the rest of the years that I was in college, and I worked every break and I worked all the summers. I took a brief detour after I graduated from college and decided that I want to be a stockbroker. Being a finance major, they were pushing on campus all the recruitment. I wound up going to work for a stock brokerage. And my boss at the internship, when I told him I was leaving to be a stockbroker, he said, "I'll give you a couple of weeks, and then I'm going to give you a call and see how much you like being a stockbroker."
and how much did you?
And so he didn't even give me a couple of weeks. He called me about 4 days into it. I think I was at the end of my first week. And as you can imagine, if you know anything about that industry, when you start out, you're not really a stockbroker. You are the lowest form of life. And they don't treat you very well. They had given me the phone book and said, call all the doctors and lawyers and try to sell them this stock. And as soon as they express any interest, you turn over the phone. I mean, it's really exactly like what you see in the movies. It is identical what they show you in those movies like Wall Street and things like that.
Okay, no problem at all, sir. Thank you very much.
But even doing all this, after 2 months, I still didn't have time to work my way up a sheet.
So he had called me. I said, I absolutely hate this. I don't know why I went to college to get a degree to do this. So I wound up going back to work for him.
There's nothing better than free. Ever heard that before? Well, it's not true. You know what your laundromat customers like even better than free? It's fast. That's right. They want to save time more than they want to save money in most cases. They want to get in and out of your laundromat as fast as possible and they'll pay more for that experience. We're proof of that here in Cincinnati. That's why we added HM Company drain troughs into our newest store in Cincinnati. While they may never know why, your customers will love that your washers all drain better and faster than with old school drain pipes. As if that wasn't enough, every HM drain trough is made in the USA, so they ship in only a few weeks and everyone is custom made just for you and your project. If you want to provide your customers with a top of the industry experience in your store, then contact your distributor to order your HM Company drain trough today or visit draintroughs.com.
So I was at this point, it was 1999. I was 26 years old, not married, no kids. And I got a call from Brian Grell at Eastern Funding.
I've heard of him.
And
we love Brian.
Some of you may have heard of him.
He's a great guy.
Some of you may have heard of him. And he called me, and we knew each other. I didn't know him, but he had heard of me through a mutual acquaintance.
Okay.
And him and Michael Fanger had started Eastern Funding toward the end of 1997. So they were about an 18-month-old company. I think they had 5 employees at the time. And Brian said, "Why don't you come down and interview? We need your help. We think you'd be a good fit." So I went down, interviewed with Brian, had not met Michael. And I went back home, and I was dating my current wife, my only wife, I should say. And I talked to her, and I said, "Well, I've got this opportunity. I was working at a big finance company that was a publicly held company, and I was safe and secure, and it looked like I had a good career path, but I had this opportunity to go to this startup." And I really hit it off with Brian, as most people do that meet Brian. He's very outgoing, and he's a great salesperson. And I said, "Well, I'm very skeptical. Do I want to go work at a startup? What happens if they go out of business? So many startups don't last, and blah, blah, blah." And my wife actually encouraged me. She said, "This sounds like a great opportunity. You really should take advantage of it. Worst case scenario, they go out of business, you get another job. Like, it's the risk is worth the potential reward." Mm-hmm. So while taking the job, and when I got there, the early days, basically Michael, Brian, and I were doing everything. We had some support staff, but we were doing everything. And my role there sort of morphed into being sort of the back office, being the voice of reason, and trying to put systems in place and allow Michael and Brian to do what they're best at, and that is to sell. Michael and Brian were great with customers, great at selling, but their back office paperwork, organizational skills, and all that were not as robust as their selling skills. And I'm not speaking out of school. They will both tell you that. So my role was to build an infrastructure, put together teams, put together processes that would allow them to bring in the deals and then have them get processed, and then let them get back out on the street and bring in more deals, and let me and the rest of the staff work on all the, dotting the I's and crossing the T's, and allow the company to grow. And so we grew from a very, very small company to over $1 billion in outstanding loans, 70 plus employees, 2 offices, and some remote workers. And now this goes back right before the pandemic. And we turned it into a great, great company, and we focused a lot on the culture. We did a lot of things that made it a great place to work and to become the best laundromat and other, but mostly laundromat financing company in the United States. And I'm extremely, extremely proud of what we accomplished there, and had some great relationships. So going back to the entrepreneurial spirit, in about 2017, 2018, my kids were sort of getting older. They were, at the end of their high school careers. And my wife and I started talking about like what our next chapter would be. My wife was a stay-at-home mom, but her background was an accountant. She was a CPA prior to us having kids. And we both thought it would be a nice challenge to have a little laundromat that, my wife could run and I could help out, but I could stay at Eastern Funding and continue to do that.
So I'm really intrigued and curious, and I would imagine our audience is too. So you're in this, let's call it an executive position. I'm sure when you started, you felt like maybe a little bit of a nobody number cruncher. But let's not make light of the fast forward 20 years later. You're, I assume, one of the leaders of a fairly significant company. Maybe not in relative to New York City, but definitely in relative to the laundromat industry.
Sure.
What made you decide to? It sounds like you decided you maybe wanted to poke around a little bit at the idea of running a laundromat. What was intriguing about that to you? Was it being a numbers guy? You had just seen thousands of deals and you understood the ROI associated with it? Was it just a numerical thing, or what was the pull in that direction?
No, that's a great question, and I sort of glanced over that a little bit, glossed over it, but yeah. So in my role, I had a dual role at Eastern. Probably 70% of my role was managing staff, dealing with HR, dealing with operations. I was the chief operating officer, dealing with infrastructure, dealing with employees, hiring, firing, retention, and all that. But I also managed several very large dealer relationships and customer relationships, only because I had been there for so many years that I did deal with some customers and some distributors, and actually dealt with one manufacturer.
Okay.
And I was intrigued by the business. Not the numbers were intriguing. I mean, I did see thousands of financial statements and projections. I had been in so many laundromats all over the country. And I really loved the fact that the return was a very, very nice return, especially relative to any of the other industries that we served and that we looked at. So number one, obviously the return looked great. I loved the fact that there was very limited inventory. There's no spoilage. There's no real loss that you have to deal with. The labor is, there is labor, but it's a less of a labor burden than most other businesses. And the fact that it seemed like a very simple business to run. And from my experience dealing with customers, going to stores, there were only a few things that you needed to do to be successful. And that was keep the machines operating, keep the store clean, and provide some good service depending on what your amenities that you offer. And it didn't seem that complicated. And I loved the fact that even then, this predates the pandemic, but we really talked about that it was recession proof. And we had been through from 1999 through 2020, a few recessions. We had some ups and downs in the economy, and we never had a significant spike in losses or in delinquency, regardless of what the economy was doing. And I love the fact that it was recession proof. Now we know, obviously, it's not just recession proof, it's pandemic proof. So even more important that we've learned in the last couple of years. So, I was interested from really from an investment standpoint and from having an ease of operation. And the other thing that I really intrigued me was I looked at the operators that we had dealt with over the years, and I said, these guys are not geniuses. None of them are PhD candidates. They're not going to, they don't have their MBA. I think we can do this. And so that's when my wife and I started to really get serious into discussing it. And again, the initial plan was that we would find or open a small laundry that would be sort of a side project and sort of dip our toe in the water. Now that's not exactly how it played out.
Best laid plans, right?
So initially your intention was, I'll keep working. This is kind of a side business that my wife can do since the kids are now going off to college. And, I might help out some, but this will be kind of her thing. Am I?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
So what really
that
happened?
Was exactly the. What's
and
the
why
real
did the
story?
plan change?
How did we get here? So what happened was we couldn't find a location. We looked and looked and looked, and for various reasons that I think a lot of people that may watch this video will fully understand. It's hard to find a good location, and it's very hard to find an existing location to purchase that makes sense. And what we found at that time, so from 2018 to 2019, the things that we looked at in terms of new builds, we couldn't find the right location in terms of the demographics. We couldn't find the right location as far as utilities. We couldn't find the right location as far as what the rents were in terms of being an appropriate rent for a laundromat. We couldn't find the right size store. It was always something that was too big or too small. So building a new location obviously presents its challenges. And then we looked at stores for sale, and we just had a lot of trouble grasping the real numbers, getting real information from the sellers. And what we found at that time was that the people that wanted to sell all had problems. I mean, none of these stores that we were looking at to acquire were great stores. They all had headaches, or they all had problems. The lease was too short, and the landlord didn't want to renew for whatever reason, or the equipment was ancient and broken down. And what we didn't want to really get involved in something, especially being new to the industry, new to operating a store, and inherit somebody else's headaches right off the bat. So we were very picky and turned down a lot of different either new locations or stores that were for sale. And then one day, a contact that I had known for many years, who's a distributor, sells equipment in New York, in the New York, Long Island, Westchester market, Mark Katzman from Metropolitan Laundry, who's a good friend of mine. He called me up and he said, "Steve, I've got a location for you. It's a great location. I think you're going to love it. I have another customer who has signed the lease, but they want to back out of the deal." And so obviously that's a red flag, right? Like, why would that happen? And so my question was, Mark, why? Why do they want to back out of the deal? And why would I want to take it? He said, well, they've had a lot of issues getting approval from the jurisdiction where it's located to get sign-offs, and they've had a lot of issues getting permits, and they signed the lease 6 months ago, and they have not been able to start doing any work. Knowing that, if you're still interested, why don't you go take a look at it? So we wound up going to take a look at it. It's located in Yonkers, New York. Yonkers is the third largest city in the state of New York. It's a very large city, great density, great demographics. The location is a shopping center that's anchored by CVS and Outback Steakhouse. It's an end cap location. It's 5,500 square feet. So it's a very large location. But going into it, we were concerned, obviously, that the prior tenant couldn't get approvals.
Like, how would you get approvals? Like, what's the difference?
Right. So how am I going to get approvals? When am I going to be 6 months from now in the same boat? So we did some digging, we did some investigation, and we found out that the city was imminently ready to approve the project. And that we were assured that if we could secure the lease, be able to start doing construction right away. And this was a shell.
Okay.
So it was a vanilla box. So it was not like it didn't require a lot of demo. So we wound up going to the landlord, taking over the lease. The prior tenant just walked away. We took over, we started construction. And we dealt with a lot of issues with the city. It should have been a red flag that it took them 6 months to approve the project. Every inspection was challenging. It was very difficult to get even a checklist of what do we need to do to get open. It was very, very challenging. But we were very confident about the location. And that's the one thing that kept us going, is that we we were very, very confident that this was a 10 location.
Just for some of our audience that I know we have a lot of people that are probably looking for laundromats because Dave gets calls on that all the time. So you found a great location, but it was a white box. Can you talk about the amount of investment there was in converting even just a white box to a laundromat? Because they're like, how big of an investment was that? Because there's a lot of infrastructure that you have to put in for a laundromat, as opposed to, buying a laundromat and, retooling one that has the infrastructure.
Sure. So it's a significant investment. And again, we live in a big country, and there's a lot of different parts of the country, and prices vary. We're in a more expensive area. So things tend to cost more, but the build out itself was about $500,000. And that's plumbing, electric, and plumbing meaning both water, sewer, and gas. And electric, doing the electricity, doing the actual construction, building the bases, pouring concrete, putting up, doing bathrooms. There were no bathrooms in this, so we had to build bathrooms from scratch, build a counter area, HVAC. There was despite the landlord saying that the HVAC worked, it did not work. So that was another added expense that we had to undertake. But it was about $500,000 for the plumbing, the electric, the gas, and the construction to put it all together. And
so that's just to get it to what a normal laundromat would have before you even do everything to make it yours.
Yeah, that's the infrastructure before you put any equipment in. And then you've got all the opening costs, the startup costs that, nobody ever tells you what they are.
It sounds like there was a lot of barriers for the, we'll call them the previous owner, but all they did is lease the space for them. That was a red flag. You talked about that. So you went in kind of eyes wide open with what you were getting involved with. From, we're in New York. The cost of everything is going to be more expensive. We're building what anywhere in the country most people would consider a large facility, 5,500 square feet. I would imagine the rent is outrageous. You're building a white box space, so your infrastructure costs are outrageous. I would assume your water, sewer, tap-in fees were probably outrageous, would be my guess. You just talked about your gas line and things like that. Did you look at the competitive analysis around that area and say to yourself, well, I guess let me ask you this question first. Did you have limited competition in that area? And was that part of what was attractive to you?
There's competition. It's debatable whether it's limited or not. That's a hard definition to come up with. So in the next shopping center, so we have a shopping center, the next one, which is you could walk to, it's, it's 100 yards away. A larger shopping center. There is a 20-year-old laundromat in that shopping center. They don't have a great location. They're kind of buried at the end of the shopping center. The parking's not great. It's slightly smaller, but it's a big store. It's probably 4,500 square feet. So it's a big store, but it's a little bit smaller, dated, and that really was the competition that we looked at, and we spent a lot of time looking at that store being there. It was not well run. It was not kept clean. A lot of machines that were out of order, but it was busy. It was very busy. And despite the parking challenge and all the other challenges, very busy. And the other thing that I really liked about that competitor was their VEN prices were very high. Their VEN prices were very high, and they did free dryers.
Okay.
Whenever you see free dry, you're making it up somewhere. You have to make it up in the washer prices. So we were happy to see that they did free dry, because we took their washer prices and then we did not do free dry. So we took their washer prices that people were used to paying, and then we charged for dryers.
Okay, I got to push pause for a second, because everybody in the industry says you can't do that, Stephen. And I know where you're going. Yeah. You know where I'm going with this. So how did you do that? Everyone says if your competitors are free dry, you have to be free dry or you won't be successful. What was your thought process behind not being free dry? And then obviously I think it worked out okay.
Yeah, it worked out for sure. So there were a couple of things. My feeling is you never want to give something away free, right? Nothing is free. Customers understand that nothing is free. Customers are very smart. So they realize that you're going to pay for it somewhere. What we decided to do and what all of our marketing, all of our advertising and everything that we did to train our customers when they walked in the door, they would look at how beautiful this store was, spotless, huge aisles, parking for 300 cars in the shopping center. Parking was not an issue. Free Wi-Fi, staff that is customer friendly, machines that are new, high spin. So they're the high G-force machines that save customers a lot of time. And other amenities like we have a card system, Laundroworks, where it accepts EBT payments, which are the public assistance payments, cash as well. And we do a cash bonus for $20. $20 cash, you get $2 extra on your card. So we had a lot of selling techniques to convince our customers that it was worth paying for the dryers here. So a little bit extra. So for a couple of dollars extra to pay for dryers, you're going to get all of these amenities and you're going to save time and your clothes are going to be cleaner and you don't have to wait for machines. You don't have to double and triple park to get your clothes out of the car and then try to find parking. So we had to educate our customers for a bunch of months. And my wife and I spent a great deal of time at the store every day, educating the customers and helping them. But there was very little pushback immediately when they walked in and saw what the facility looked like. They really didn't care at all what the pricing was. And what we've done subsequent to that is we have raised the prices over time. I mean, we're open almost 3 years. So we have now raised our prices, whereas our competitor, that one competitor, has actually lowered their pricing. And
it's the only arrow they have in their quiver,
the only thing
right?
they have. Yeah, it's the only thing they have. And what's really funny is that they're still open. They're still busy. It's really, really interesting that they're still busy. They're still open. And they do have some advantages. One is they probably, I'm assuming, have no debt because they've been there many, many years. Their rent is probably half of what our rent is, again, because they've been there for so many years. They have almost no labor. So they have a different business model. And there are opportunities for everybody to be successful. And I'm happy they didn't go out of business. I never want to see anybody go out of business. That was never our intention. But we have just distinguished ourselves with our service, how clean we keep our facility, and pricing, to me, has never been an issue.
So let me ask you, as someone that's analyzed, at least from a financial perspective, thousands of laundromats, I assume you've been in, physically visited thousands of laundromats in your life, would be my guess. Correct me if I'm wrong. How did you correlate those two things together and come up with this business strategy? Because you could have went a different direction, right? You could have chosen a different strategy for your model. What was the? I mean, you have probably more data than almost anyone on what I call the top of the industry, the middle industry, the bottom. Not to really categorize us, but as far as revenue, profitability, net operating income, things like that, I would guess you have kind of an access to a treasure trove of just 20 years history at Eastern.
Why did you decide to be the Nordstrom laundromat as opposed to the Dollar General?
Yeah, we had a different terminology in my house, and that was we wanted to be the Starbucks of laundromats. I have been in so many laundromats, and it used to drive my wife crazy and I know that there are a lot of people that do the same thing. Wherever we went, we gotta go find a laundromat.
Absolutely.
Yes, that's my life.
Yeah, I mean, we on our honeymoon, we honeymooned in St. Lucia in the year 2000 when we got married, and we found a laundromat in St. Lucia, and everywhere we go, we have found laundromats. We look for laundromats, and I know that it's a disease that we all have, and I know there's a lot of us that are like that. But I had never seen a laundromat. I've seen some nice laundromats. Don't get me wrong. I've seen some really bad ones. I've seen some nice ones, but we had never seen a laundromat that was what our customers refer to us as the bougie laundromat. And that was intentional. We figured we want to be the price leader, meaning charge the most, not the price leader of charge the least. We want to charge the most, and we want to give the customer an experience. Like when you walk into a Starbucks, it's an experience. It's not just coffee. And the reason that people pay $7 for a basic cup of coffee is for the experience. And we want to create that brand that would say, you know what, I'm willing to pay extra for this experience. And that was just the business model that we came up with. And we figured that we would be more successful. Now it's hard to pull that off. It's especially in an industry where for many, many, many years, it was all about being lowest price. So why should you pay more when you can go down the street and pay less? And we figured we could pull it off. And the way that we did that was, and if you check out our website, you can see it's cleanfreshlaundromat.com. If I'm allowed to plug.
Yes, definitely.
You could see pictures on our website, Clean Fresh Laundromat. We actually built a bar, and that was not a bar like with taps and and drinks, but we built a bar along one wall. We put a counter height quartz counter bar and high stools with backs on them, and we have outlets and charging stations. And we got that idea from Starbucks. Starbucks had that, where you could sit down, drink your cup of coffee, plug in, get on your free Wi-Fi and do some work. And our customers absolutely love it. It's a place where people can go, they throw their laundry in the wash, they sit at the bar, they bring their laptop, they'll watch a movie on an iPad or whatever it is. And it's an experience. It's something that makes doing a mundane chore like laundry a little bit more enjoyable. We have the other thing that we did that was my urging, because it drove me crazy at all these laundromats. We have no TVs in our laundromat.
Why? Why not TVs?
Great question. I'm glad you asked that question. So I'm prepared to answer that.
Okay, I want to hear.
TVs create a situation in a laundromat, as far as I'm concerned, that is not conducive to doing business for several reasons. One is, I don't want people sitting there watching TV. I want them doing their laundry and getting out. So one of the things about a laundromat is throughput. And there's always sort of a concern with people leave their stuff in a washer or their dryer, and then they don't take it out and the other customers can't use it. I always thought, and I've been to laundromats, that I see people watching the TV and I'm wondering, like, how do I get them out of the store? So that was number one. Number two, they get very dusty and they get a lot of lint on them. That's just the nature of the business. And that sort of, with my type A personality, I don't want to see a dusty, lint-ridden TV. I think it looks bad, and it's kind of an eyesore. I also think that, especially with stores that have multiple TVs, it's a headache for the attendants to be changing channels. You've got the audio from one TV on something and the audio from another TV, and they're conflicting. So to me, it's sort of an environmental atmosphere and something that sort of always bothered me when I was at laundromats. Can you change the channel? Now the attendant has to stop what they're doing, go find the remote, change the channel. And then what happens when there's two customers and they want to watch different things? So that always, to me, seemed like a no-brainer. We don't need TVs. The other thing I think about it is everybody has a phone or an iPad that is connected to either my Wi-Fi or that's connected to a cell service. They can watch whatever they want. And they've got earbuds. So I don't have to hear, and the other customers don't have to hear what they're watching. So for those reasons, we decided no TVs. It's unnecessary. It's an eyesore. And what we decided to do is we put speakers in. So I have a square store, essentially. I have speakers in each corner, in two corners, and we pipe in music and it's been tremendously well received. Our customers love the music that we put on, and we vary from a couple of different channels. So that way there's something playing and it's not interfering with the atmosphere of the store. So that's my TV sort of situation.
And our stores kind of go along with that. We do have TVs, but just another spin on that. A lot of what you said, we actually agree with, even though we have TVs. We do the music. We have speakers with a music sound system with kind of soft music or whatever, and the TVs are muted, but we use Atmosphere TV, if you've heard of that.
Okay, sure.
So it's like, it's like short little, almost like TikTok type videos where you don't need any sound. So for that person or for that kid that doesn't have a device, there's something to kind of entertain them, but they're little shorts. It's not like, a movie that's going to suck you in for 2 hours and you ignore your, your laundry.
Or a football game or a soccer game. Like I saw a lot of the World Cup soccer where, there are 50
you got to
people
stay there and
around
watch the game. Yeah. So we kind of let our customers watch that stuff on their own. But then we do the Atmosphere TV. Other than in our kids area, we do put on like some cartoons, but yeah. So we kind of do a lot of what you said, but we do have TVs.
That's a lot of trial and error. We had a lot of the same problems that you're describing. And we were like, okay, we didn't like that either. We were like, what's a different version of this? How can we tweak this? And it was many renditions to get to kind of this perfect storm, if you will, for us.
Sure.
Yep.
So tell me about this store. How many machines? What size machines? I know you said you have large aisles. How large are you talking? What do you consider a large aisle?
Yeah.
Tell us what you learned from all your views of laundromats over the years.
Yeah, that's for sure. One of the things that we were concerned about was people, even before the pandemic, and now it's even more true, people don't want to be on top of each other. I've been in a lot of laundromats where you had an aisle and it was, if you had both doors open on the washers, you couldn't even fit through. And I get it. Space is at a premium and it costs money. Every square foot is costing you money.
Especially in New York.
Especially in New York. And every, these businesses are driven by revenue that is mainly produced by how many machines you have. And the more machines you have, the more potential revenue you can make. It's a very simple formula. So I was in a lot of stores where it was very tight. And that was always something that bothered me. And it not bothered me, but I was always concerned with. Now, fortunately, we had so much space to work with that we were able to do things a little bit differently. So we have 3 rows of equipment of washers. We have 60 washers. We have a front row that's back to back. We have a second row that's back to back, and then a third row that's just one row. It's not back to back. And then we have 70 dryers. One of the challenges that we faced when we took the location was that we could not change the layout that had already been submitted to the city.
Oh, so you had to use his layout.
Right. So that was out of our control. We could not redraw the plans and resubmit them and change the layout. We were beholden to that, which we knew. That was we went in knowing that. And we didn't hate the layout. It was fine. I would do it differently today after 3 years, which I'm sure a lot of people say the same thing. I would do this differently. But it's good. It's a good layout. It works. The aisles are, I don't know exactly the size. Unfortunately, I don't remember, but I can tell you the aisles that are back to back of washers, there's plenty of room to have the doors open and 2 people to walk through. So nice. I don't know exactly what it is, but there's plenty of room. People do not really ever feel crowded except on Sunday.
So let me ask you a question on that, because one of the exceptions I hear all the time when I talk about throughput, and I call it the elbow dance. Customers don't want to do the excuse me, pardon me. And as you said, they're probably more sensitive to it than ever before. One of the pushbacks I always hear to that is, yeah, but you're in Cincinnati. because our rent is very reasonable here. Now, you don't have to tell us what your rent is, but you said earlier that your rent is high for sure. How did you justify that? Because people tell me that you can't have it both ways. You can't. The numbers don't work with high rent and proper throughput, is what I hear all the time. And here I am in Cincinnati, Ohio, so who am I to say otherwise? I've heard other exceptions. I'm curious your thoughts on that.
So one of the things was, and one of the reasons why we were very attracted to this reason is the density there and the demographics in terms of, especially in terms of the renter population. We're surrounded by apartment complexes, 5 and 6 story apartment buildings. And that's just right on top of us. And when you draw the demographic out 1 mile, 3 miles, 5 miles, or even tighter than that, there's a, it's a greater than, I think it's 60% renters. It's 60% or 65% multi-family rentals. So it's not like you're renting a single family home. And we were quite confident that we could do enough turns to make it work. And what we decided was we kind of figured, looking at the income levels, the renter population, the density, that we could do 4 turns a day. And that didn't include wash, dry, fold. That was 4 turns of self-service. And when we looked at that with 60 washers and 70 dryers, with the vend prices that we had, we were very confident we could get to 4 turns and have that be that would be a very successful store. And then if you layer on wash, dry, fold, it's a very successful store in any definition of the word. Now our rent is we pay $30 a square foot a year, $30 a square foot.
Most people would consider that very high.
Yes,
it's high. Yeah. There's no doubt about it. It's high. However, it's not out of control for where we are. We looked at other spaces that were higher, and we decided that we can make this work based on 4 turns a day, and we had budgeted a very modest amount of wash, dry, fold. We were not as confident that we could do significant wash, dry, fold business as we were that we could do 4 turns a day. We were wrong about the wash, dry, fold. We were
in a good way.
wrong.
In a good way.
in a good way.
Great to hear.
What about the turns per day? Do you know what you're averaging?
Yeah, we do 5 turns a day, average a day. So we were also wrong about that in a good way.
Okay, so I want to pivot the conversation a little bit, and we're not finished yet, so we'll let you go in a minute. I promise,
no
Stephen.
problem.
We appreciate your time today. So I over the last 3 or 4 years, I've found myself saying more and more often, this business breaks down into 50% facility and 50% operations. And I don't think that's talked about enough. I think people talk about the facilities and the machines, and even as we're evolving, proper throughput and maybe even nice furniture and a feature bar and things like that. We don't talk about the facilities. I mean, we talk about the facilities all the time, but we don't talk about the operations. So talk about your staff and how you've built the staff, because there's no way that you build a facility like this doing the numbers you just described, and you have to be fully attended, right?
Yeah, we're fully attended, and I alluded to earlier, our wash, dry, fold has evolved from a very modest, where actually my wife was the wash and fold attendant when we opened. She went for training, watched a bunch of YouTube videos, and then a good friend of mine who owns stores in New York City, I called him up because he does a very large wash, dry, fold business. I called him up. I said, I have to send my wife for training. And she went and spent the day in a store in Manhattan doing wash and fold, learning how to do it, so that she could train all of our employees. And that's kind of how we started. Where we're at now is we have 8 employees that work 8-hour shifts. The wash and fold and our counter is open from 7 a.m. till 11 p.m. So that's a 7 to 3 and a 3 to 11. And we have our staff working that. We also, because we're so busy, on the weekends, we have a full-time cashier It's too busy. It's just too busy. And my feeling was that I want our attendants to focus on doing the wash and fold, the quality that we expect. And we are much more about the quality than we are about the quantity. And again, it's part of our overall atmosphere and experience. We charge compared to our competitors, we charge a lot. We charge $1.45 a pound for wash, dry, fold, where our competitors charge 99 cents, $1.05. And there's reasons why they do that. But and again, it was the same thing. We would have customers come in and go, $1.45. I can have it done down the street, 99 cents.
Then go.
Absolutely.
And then compare what you get.
I will not be upset if you do that. However, we use a quality detergent, a quality fabric softener. We sort, we wash dark colors with darks, lights with lights. We take very good, care of packaging. I mean, it's not the same. So staff is that we've gone through some different iterations as far as cleaning the store. And this was a big one for us. When we opened, probably in the third month when COVID kind of slowed down a little bit, we went 24 hours. Our competitors were 24 hours, a lot of 24-hour in our market and in New York City. And we kind of thought we needed to do that. It was nothing but a headache. It was very, very challenging to find staff. The staff that we found not working, sleeping, not cleaning. And we wound up changing that. And we went to an overnight. We weren't 24 hours. We would close the store, but we hired a cleaner to come in and clean overnight. And that was another headache that did not go well at all. And it's trial and error, especially when you don't know what you're doing. So probably a year ago, I had the bright idea of we're going to close the store and we're going to hire a cleaning service company to come in and clean at the end of the night. Best thing that I've ever done. And I should have done it 2 years prior. So the way this works is it's a cleaning company. So they're staffed and they provide the cleaners. So you don't have to worry about somebody calling out sick. You don't have to worry about somebody's car broke down, they didn't show up. This is a service that they deal with that. So we close at 11. Our last wash is at 9. The cleaning service sends 2 people. They start at about 10:30, and they start depending on who's left in the store, how many customers, where they are. But they'll start with cleaning the bathrooms, and then they will. One of the biggest focus was the machines, the soap trays. Again, I'm type A personality. I'm very anal about it. When I walk into a store, one of the first things I do, any store, is I lift open the soap tray and I see, ultimately, it's disgusting.
Gunk. Soap gunk.
And nobody wants to clean that. It's a hassle to clean it. Nobody wants to clean it. But this cleaning service, I made it very clear, those 60 soap trays have to be clean, completely clean every night. Because the first thing when customers come in, they see that too. So they clean the bathrooms, they scrub the bathrooms. They do, with a shop vac, 70 dryers worth of lint. They mop the floors. They wipe down all the folding tables, the bar, the seating. They clean the machines top and front with baby oil, which is absolutely the best thing to do to clean stainless steel. I don't care what anybody else says. A little bit of baby oil will make your machines that are stainless steel look fabulous. So don't waste your money on stainless steel magic or any of those stainless steel cleaning products. You're wasting your money. So that's my PSA. But the cleaning service comes in and they take care of it, and they just do a tremendous job. And it's a headache that I don't have to deal with. People don't want to spend. I get it. It's more labor, but it's absolutely worth it when you have a busy store to allow your attendants to do what they're supposed to do, which is make money for you by doing wash, dry, fold. Other than that, the facilities my wife and I take care of. My wife does the repairs. I am not handy at all, but she will do the repairs. We're fortunate to have 3-year-old equipment, so it's really in great shape. but she will, take drains apart that are clogged with raw wires, because ultimately that's happens all the time. And she will deal with fixing machines. I will do vending. We have 2 vending machines, a soap and a snack vendor that we own. So we stock those. And we kind of divide and conquer, but it's really basically making sure that the store is clean, the machines are working, and then on the wash, dry, fold, that the employees are doing the right thing, that you're not losing orders, that you're monitoring what's getting done. They're not skipping orders. There's some management in wash, dry, fold that is a little bit different than just owning and operating a store. It's a different animal. And my wife and I tag team that.
Which that actually takes me back to your story that we didn't hit is in the beginning, your plan was this was going to be kind of her business since the kids were out of the house. You were going to still be at Eastern Funding. And obviously, spoiler alert here, you're not at Eastern Funding. So what happened to the plan? So why did you leave Eastern Funding and where are you all at now? Kind of update us.
Yeah, the plan evolved, as I like to say,
as plans do.
as plans do. And just to go back, the plan was I was going to stay at Eastern. We were going to open a small store. My wife would run it. I would help out. It would be what a lot of people think a laundromat is, which is a passive income, and not a lot of work. And as we were building it, and as we got closer to opening, like toward the end of 2019, and we saw what the potential for the store was and what it would take to manage drop off, wash and fold, cleaning, people coming in and out. It changed our opinion of sort of what we wanted to get out of it. And I think when we had this sort of Starbucks idea, that made us go in a different direction. And we kind of said, all right, if we're going to do this, we're going to invest all this time and money into it. It's a lot of money. I think we need to do it. And I think it needs to be a full-time situation so that we can, and it's kind of exactly, it's if you do something, you got to do it right. And that was kind of where we struggled with it. And I my intention was not to leave Eastern, but I didn't see that I could stay at Eastern, which the office was in Manhattan. So I had a bit of a commute. I had about an hour commute each way, worked a lot of hours, had a big responsibility, had a lot of employees. And I just didn't think that I could do both. And I was afraid that I was setting my wife up for, not for failure, but putting her in a position where it would be extremely stressful and extremely difficult to do it by herself, especially a store this large that we were expecting big numbers from. Fast forward, I was able to acquire an existing laundromat in last July after looking for 2+ years for a second store or something to do, facing the same challenges that we faced finding the first store. I was able to find a store for sale at a great location, and it was a turnkey store. It came fully staffed. It came with a manager.
Nice.
And the staff and the manager had been there for almost 20 years. So they were running the store. And it also came with a full-time repair person who had been there for 10+ years that literally comes in 5 days a week and fixes the machines. These are older.
How did you look into this?
I wish I could say, it was just luck. It was a former client, a former borrower of mine at Eastern Funding who I had kept in contact with. He called me. He was at retirement age. And he said, hey, Steven, I'm thinking about getting out. Before I list the store with the broker, I'd love for you to come and see it. I brought my wife. We looked at it. We loved the location. And we loved the fact that it was a turnkey, that, we would be able to make this investment and, day one, start making money. And that was attractive given the other experience of building a store that took almost a year and all the challenges. I mean, obviously there are positives and benefits to both building a store and to buying a store. And that's probably a whole different podcast or actually it's probably one you've done already. But this was a different experience. This was taking over somebody's existing operation, and we've made some significant changes since we took over. But the thing that resonated with us was that it was a turnkey, that it was already built, that it was already staffed, and the staff was invested. They'd been there for a long, long time. We've changed a lot of things since we've been there, but only to make the experience better and more consistent with what our other store does.
What was your formula for placing a valuation on that store?
So, I was fortunate that I knew the owner. I was somewhat familiar with the numbers, but not entirely. But he was very, very transparent with the numbers, which helped a lot.
Sure.
Given the fact that it did have a card system, even though it was ancient, he was able to provide the card system printouts for the self-serve. And he gave me 2 years worth of printouts for the wash, dry, fold, which was very challenging to go through, because that was also, there was a lot of, the data was weird. And then the expenses. I mean, the expenses are basically what they are. They're rent and labor and supplies and utilities. So it was sort of easy in that sense. And we came to a valuation of a 4 times multiple.
Okay.
So we kind of, he was asking a little higher, I was less. We kind of split the difference, and I think it's a fair deal. The equipment is older. It's got 20-year-old Dexter washers and dryers. But if you saw these machines, they look beautiful. And, the only problem with them is that they do use more utilities than our newer 200G machines. These are 80G Dexter washers, and the dryers are 20-year-old Dexter dryers. And the utilities are higher. They're on the higher side.
Could you? We always like to assume that our audience is at least 50% beginners, because we think that's pretty accurate. When you say a 4x multiple, I think there's a big misnomer among beginners out there what that means. With you being a finance and a numbers guy, can you super quickly explain to someone what a 4x multiple is?
Sure. So we take a look at, and we did this on the underwriting side at Eastern Funding. We take a look at the gross income. So all the revenue streams. And in this case, there were 3. So it was self-service, which is the washer and dryers. There was over-the-counter, which is wash, dry, fold. And then they sell, in our Manhattan store, we sell a little bit of soap over the counter. There's no vending machines. It's a smaller store. It's about 2,800 square feet. So there's no space for vending machines. So they sell it over the counter, a little bit of soap, and that's the third revenue stream. So it's self-service, it's wash, dry, fold, and then there's some over-the-counter soap and some bags, some laundry bags. You take that's your gross income, gross revenue, and then you've got all your expenses, and to name a few: rent, utilities, labor. Those are the big ones. Any insurance, trash removal, supplies. That's a big one actually for us, because we do a big wash, dry, fold business. So buying soap and bags for the wash, dry, fold is a big expense. So you take all your expenses and you come out with a net income, and that does not include taxes, does not include depreciation, does not include your loan payment. Those things are excluded because those things are they are different for every operator. So whenever you're looking at analyzing a deal, those things are excluded only because your financial situation may not require a loan, whereas somebody may. So your loan is your business as a buyer, and your tax situation is your business as a buyer. So those things are excluded. So it's just the revenue and just the actual cash expenses that are calculated in terms of looking at a net income. You take that net income, and that's what you're going to make in a year before your taxes and your loan payments. So that's the common denominator, is your net income.
So when you paid 4X, you were paying them 4X of their annual net income. Correct.
Yep. That's exactly what it is. And when we talk about the industry, our industry, the range is 3 to 5. It goes beyond 5 in certain circumstances. It could go below 3, but typically we talk about what's the average. It's 3 to 5. And the factors that determine those averages, those multiples are a myriad of things. Your lease term determines it. A longer lease is better. A shorter lease would, make it less valuable.
Mm-hmm.
The age of the equipment factors in, because eventually you're going to have to replace the equipment. At some point, it just doesn't. I mean, it won't run forever. It'll run for a long, long time. But it's a diminishing value. So age of the equipment and the length of the lease are two determining factors. There's several determining factors, but those are kind of the big ones, and that makes your value a little bit higher, or a little bit lower. So we were at 4. I was comfortable with that. A 4 multiple means that, in my opinion, you're going to get your money back you have a 25% return, right? So let's say the store has a net income of $200,000, just using round numbers. You would pay a 4 multiple, you can pay $800,000, and you'll get your money back in 4 years. That's what the multiple is. So if you're going to get your money back in 4 years, you get back 25% of it each year for 4 years. It's a 25% return. If you were to pay cash, it's a cash on cash return. Your return, and this is sort of things we've analyzed over the years. Your return changes if you take on debt, which means you put in less money, you have a higher return, but you're going to pay a loan payment. So there's always a trade-off. So you have interest and things like that. And there's some tax advantages to having interest. Again, it's probably a whole nother podcast, but that's how we looked at it. And we looked at it. We're going to buy this store. We're going to get our money back in 4 years. And it's a great investment.
Yeah. Well, there you have it. Thank you for explaining that. There you have it, folks. A 10-minute masterclass on Laundromat Valuation by the man himself, Stephen Gramaglia. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. So go ahead. I was just
going to say, what's next for you all? So you have these 2 amazing stores that are operating beautifully, and you want to tell us about number 3 and what you all see in the future?
Yeah, we are in construction, building out I didn't learn my lesson the first time, so we're building out a store, building out our second store, which will be our third. So we're doing a second build out. This is also a vanilla box. We're expanding into the Bronx, which is another part of New York City, but equidistant. So each store will be sort of in a triangle, with the furthest one being about 20 minutes away. So it's a good geographic commuting area. This is a bigger store. It's going to be 6,400 square feet, with 64 washers and 74 dryers, something like that, in a retail space with a dedicated parking lot. So this is a different location than what we've got, where we're in a strip center in Yonkers. In Manhattan, we have no parking. We're just a store level with no parking. This will be a different animal, where we're on the ground floor of a 200-unit apartment complex.
You're literally in the building.
In the building.
Wow.
Yeah, we're literally
nice.
We have 200 units of captive customers. We hope to open by the end of February. So we're pretty close. This one went very smoothly. New York City, ironically, is a lot easier to deal with than the city of Yonkers, which you would imagine it would be the opposite, but it's not. And we're still looking. We have another space that we have identified that would work for us, and we put an offer in. We don't know if we're going to get it, but we have another space that's in Manhattan, in a similar neighborhood to where we are now, not far.
Nice.
And we don't plan, we don't have a plan. We don't have a goal. I know that's probably a question that would come up. How many stores do you want? I get that question a lot. I don't really have an answer. I mean, I think we're just picky, and as opportunities come up, we analyze them. And if something works, it works. We just, I don't have a number in mind. Like, I want to have 10 stores. I want to have 20 stores. I want to have as many stores as I can handle that are good stores, that are profitable stores, that we can run the way we want to run them the right way.
All right. Well, listen, my friend, thank you for joining us today. Before we let you go, I'm going to ask you the age-old question that we ask pretty much everyone that's on the show. And I know for a fact you get approached all the time from what we call beginners or newbies in the industry. What's a couple pieces of advice that you would give someone? You have 20 years at Eastern Funding analyzing laundromats and numbers. Now you have about 3 years in the industry. You're at 3 stores, going to 20 very soon, it sounds like. What are those couple nuggets outside of the stereotypical keep it clean? Everybody always says that. What's a couple nuggets you could give a beginner that would maybe set them up for success in a way that they haven't already read a few times?
One is just be prepared to have more money than you think you need. And that's one of the biggest things. So when I was at Eastern and we were making loans, we had a spectacular track record of making good loans and a very low default rate and a very low delinquency rate. And there were some very common errors that people made that we saw over and over whenever we would have a problem. The biggest one is being undercapitalized and not planning for that rainy day, not planning for, having a gas or a water problem that shuts your store down. And that happens. And if you're not prepared for that, if you're not financially prepared to support the business when you're not making money or when you have a bad week or a bad month, that is a big problem. So that would be the number one issue. And then from an operations standpoint, the best thing that we ever did, my wife and I, was we spent a lot of time at the store, meeting the customers, learning how to use the machines. I mean, that's another thing that people don't realize is it's not just that you start a machine and it magically produces clean clothes. We had a lot of customers that would ask us, well, what do these different cycles mean? How does it actually work? Why are there no suds in the machine? And we had to learn what made these machines work so that we could educate the customers who ultimately had questions. And we couldn't say, I don't know, I have no idea how it works. So spend time in the store, meet your customers, learn what they like, what they don't like, what they want, learn how the machines work so that you're educated when people ask you questions. And I would urge anyone that thinks that this is an absentee business that's a passive income, think a different way. That's just, you're going to lose out on a lot of opportunity and a lot of income by thinking that way, because there are opportunities that are out there that you need to take advantage of. And being involved in your business, it's your business. You've invested whatever money you did. You want to make as much money as you can. That's why we're all doing this. Be at the store, be active as much as you can, spend as much time there as you can. You will make more money if you're there.
You know what? That's 2 pieces of fantastic advice from someone. The second one isn't a piece of advice you would expect to receive from someone who's a data finance guy. And I think that speaks to the magnitude of it, the importance of it. That's fantastic advice. And the last thing I'll add in there, Stephen, is keep in mind that you don't have to do that forever and ever. Amen. I mean, you're eventually going to learn how the machine works. You're going to get to know your customers. You're going to get to know your staff. Obviously, you're creating operations manuals and things like that. Nobody should know them as well as you. That's why I always like to stress to people, there's a fine line between a passive or absentee business and being boots on the ground 60, 80 hours a week. You can find a middle ground, but you're probably not going to find it in the first 6 months.
No, initially,
that's what some people want.
No, initially you have to put that time in, and then over time you can be there less.
Absolutely. And once again, I've said it a few times, but thank you so much for your time. I know how valuable your time is. You could be and probably should be doing other things, but you took a couple hours out of your day to spend with us. And we know that's because you believe in giving value back to the industry, sharing your expertise, your opinions, your methodologies and things like that. And it means the world to us that you were willing to donate your time for the betterment of the industry. So thank you so much for doing that.
No, it's been my pleasure. I've always been a believer in, rising tide lifts all boats, and our industry, for many, many, many years has kind of gotten a bad rap. We've been able and been successful in changing some of that over the last couple of years with the help of the CLA and some lobbying and some, especially being deemed an essential business by the government during the pandemic. That helped. But we need to be better operators. We need to lift this industry up and make it, a much more positive image for our industry. It's only for our best interests as a total. So I'm happy to be here. Thanks for asking me to be on. I'm hoping that whoever's watching this will get some benefit out of it.
Oh, absolutely. Well, I have a phrase I say. I like to go around the industry collecting golden nuggets. And I always say I may listen to somebody talk for 10 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes. I've never met anyone I agree with 100% on anything. I'm just looking for the golden nuggets in every conversation. That's why we do this podcast. So, guys, if you can't pick a dozen or two golden nuggets out of this conversation today, you weren't paying attention, so you need to go watch it again. All right. Well, listen, for everybody back home, thank you for joining us today. I know this episode went a little bit long, but you know what? Sometimes when the value's being brought, we just don't want to cut it off. And Stephen is, very humble, but one of the legends in this industry. I'll just go ahead and say it because I know it for a fact from his time with Eastern Funding and even getting it off the ground and all the work he did there and how Eastern Funding serves our industry well. And now as an operator as well, bringing value through this podcast. So for everyone back home, thank you for joining us today. We'll see you next time for another episode of the Laundromat Millionaire Show. Take care.
Take care.